The trial of Jesus Christ is one of the most significant events in human history. Jesus didn't just go to the cross. He was dragged through 6 different illegal trials in less than 18 hours before he was crucified. Not 1, not 2, but 6 separate trials. And every one of them was filled with corruption, false accusations, political manipulation, and illegal procedures. And the verdict was already decided before it even began. What they did to him wasn't just wrong, it was completely unlawful. Yet Jesus said almost nothing in his defense. Why? Because this was not just a trial against Jesus, it was the moment Jesus chose to take your place. And here's the shocking truth. He went through all of it, for you. 9 key reasons the trials were illegal. 1. Conducted at night. Jewish law prohibited capital trials from being held at night. The Sanhedrin convened Jesus' trial in darkness, violating the rule that trials must occur during daylight hours between the morning and evening sacrifices. 2. No proper indictment or witnesses. Trials required formal charges based on the testimony of 2 or more witnesses who agreed on the details. The Sanhedrin sought and used false witnesses whose testimonies contradicted each other, rendering the case invalid. Mark 14:56-59 says, "Many false witnesses spoke against him, but they contradicted each other. Finally, some men stood up and gave this false testimony. We heard him say, 'I will destroy this temple made with human hands, and in 3 days I will build another, made without human hands.' But even then they didn't get their stories straight." 3. Unanimous conviction. In capital cases, a unanimous verdict of guilt was forbidden. Such a verdict was seen as suspicious and likely due to collusion. The Sanhedrin declared Jesus guilty unanimously, which should have led to his release, not condemnation. 4. No defense or right to counsel. The accused had the right to a defense. Jesus was denied this right and was largely silent, not because he had no defense, but because the trial was a sham with no genuine intent to hear his side. 5. Judicial procedural violations. The trial began before the morning sacrifice, on a feast day, Passover, and in a private home, Caiaphas's palace, all of which were illegal. The Sanhedrin also acted as both prosecutors and judges, contrary to the principle that judges must remain impartial. 6. Predetermined verdict. The outcome was decided in advance. The Sanhedrin had already decided to kill Jesus, so they fabricated charges and sought evidence to justify their decision, turning the trial into a farce. 7. Illegal use of self-incrimination. Jesus' admission to being the Messiah was used as evidence against him, but Jewish law forbade using self-incrimination as proof. The court should have investigated further, not condemned him immediately. 8. Bribery and corruption. Judas was bribed to betray Jesus, and the Sanhedrin used his testimony, making the entire process tainted by corruption, which disqualified the court. 9. Political manipulation. The Jewish leaders changed the charge from blasphemy, a religious offense, to treason, a political crime, when bringing Jesus before Pilate, which was an attempt to bypass Jewish limitations on capital punishment. In summary, the trials were not only illegal but a mockery of justice, orchestrated by religious leaders who wanted Jesus dead, regardless of the law. As multiple sources confirm, these proceedings violated at least 12 to 18 distinct legal principles of the time, making the conviction and execution of Jesus a judicial injustice. In this video, we're going to uncover the 6 illegal trials of Jesus, and what they reveal about sin, justice, and God's incredible mercy. Introduction. The trial of Jesus Christ is the greatest miscarriage of justice in human history. In less than 18 hours, Jesus was taken through 6 separate hearings and trials, designed not to discover truth, but to guarantee his execution. The religious leaders had already made their decision. Jesus must die. But in order to make it look legal, they needed to go through a series of official proceedings. 3 trials before Jewish authorities and 3 trials before Roman authorities. Now let's look at the 6 stages of Jesus' illegal trial. 1. Hearing before Annas. Jesus was first taken to Annas, the former high priest. Although he no longer held the official office, Annas was still extremely powerful and influential among the Jewish leadership. This hearing was not a formal trial. It was more like an interrogation designed to gather evidence against Jesus. But Annas could not produce legitimate charges. Even so, Jesus was struck in the face during this hearing, an illegal act. Because the office of high priest was for life, Annas was still the official high priest in the eyes of the Jews, even though the Romans had appointed another. Thus, Annas still carried much weight among the Sanhedrin. For a full explanation, see John chapter 18 verses 12 to 24. 2. Trial before Caiaphas. Jesus was then taken to Caiaphas, the acting high priest. This hearing took place at night, which itself violated Jewish legal procedures. False witnesses were brought forward, but their testimonies contradicted one another. Finally, Caiaphas asked Jesus directly if he was the Son of God. When Jesus affirmed the truth, Caiaphas accused him of blasphemy. The council erupted in anger. Jesus was mocked, beaten, and spit upon. For a full explanation, see Matthew chapter 26, verses 57 to 68. Note, both Annas and Caiaphas cared more about their political ambitions than about their responsibility to lead the people to God. Though religious leaders, they had become evil. As the nation's spiritual leaders, they should have been sensitive to God's revelation. They should have known that Jesus was the Messiah about whom the Scriptures spoke, and they should have pointed the people to Jesus. But when deceitful men and women pursue evil, they want to eliminate all opposition. Instead of honestly evaluating Jesus' claims based on their knowledge of Scripture, these religious leaders sought to further their own selfish ambitions, and were even willing to kill God's Son if that's what it took to do it. 3. Trial before the Sanhedrin, full council. Just after daybreak, 70 members of the Jewish council met to rubber-stamp their approval of the previous hearings to make them appear legal. But this was not a real trial. It was simply a rubber-stamp meeting to make the previous illegal proceedings appear legitimate. The verdict had already been decided. Jesus was officially condemned to death. However, under Roman law, the Jewish leaders did not have authority to execute anyone, so they needed the Roman government to carry out the sentence. For a full explanation, see Matthew 27, 1 and 2, Mark 15, 1, and Luke 22, 66 to 71. 4. First trial before Pilate. Jesus was taken to Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor, but now the accusations changed. Before the Jews, Jesus was accused of blasphemy. Before Pilate, he was accused of treason against Rome. Pilate quickly realized something was wrong. After questioning Jesus, Pilate said, "I find no fault in this man." But the crowd and religious leaders continued pressing for his execution. For a full explanation, see Luke chapter 23 verses 1 through 6, and John chapter 18 verses 28 through 38. 5. Trial before Herod Antipas. When Pilate learned that Jesus was from Galilee, he sent him to Herod Antipas, the ruler of that region. Herod was excited to see Jesus because he hoped to see him perform a miracle, but Jesus refused to answer him. Herod and his soldiers mocked Jesus, dressed him in a royal robe, and sent him back to Pilate. For a full explanation, see Luke 23, 6 to 12. 6. Second trial before Pilate. Now Jesus stood again before Pilate. Pilate repeatedly declared, "I find no guilt in him." Even Herod had found no crime. Still, the crowd began shouting, "Crucify him." Pilate tried to compromise by having Jesus flogged, a brutal punishment using a whip embedded with metal and glass. This would have killed an ordinary man. But the mob only became louder. Finally, Pilate gave in to the pressure. He released a murderer named Barabbas and handed Jesus over to be crucified. So the Roman soldiers took charge of Jesus and led him away to be crucified by being nailed to the cross for a hideously slow and extremely painful death. For a full explanation, see Luke 23, 13 through 25. Why this matters. Jesus was declared innocent again and again. Innocent before Annas, innocent before Caiaphas, innocent before the Sanhedrin, innocent before Pilate twice, and innocent before Herod. Yet he was still condemned. Why? Because Jesus was not dying for his sins, he was dying for ours. The innocent Son of God stood condemned so that guilty sinners like you and me could stand forgiven before God. That is the power of the cross. Jesus went through injustice so we could receive mercy. Comment, "He took my place," if you believe this. And don't miss what comes next. It will change how you see salvation forever. Watch next. Why most people think they're saved, but aren't. Biblical truth. And if you want more biblical teaching like this, make sure to subscribe to Prime Life Ministries and share this message with someone who needs to hear it. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next video.